It's profound, the changes that can happen on this level that you can't see as an individual, but are really happening at this microscopic cellular pathways. And this is influencing every single aspect of every cell in your body. So the way your liver functions, the way your pancreas functions, to your thyroid, to your brain at the end of the day. All of this is being impacted.
Hey everybody, it's Chris, and today I'm interviewing Dr. Monisha Bhanote. Dr. Monisha and I met on the Holistic Holiday at Sea cruise. I thought she was just phenomenal and enjoyed getting to know her and chatting about what she does as a medical doctor. And she specializes in diet and lifestyle medicine centered around a whole food, plant-based diet, which I think is terrific. And I'm always excited when I meet doctors who are in a lot of ways self-educated because they didn't learn these things in med school. They took it upon themselves to read and research and really learn how to best take care of their patients. And so, I mean, this is the future of medicine. And I'm just excited to see you again, Dr. Bhanote. And how are you?
Everything's going good.
And tell me what part of the country you're in.
I am located in the Southeast. I'm currently based out of Florida.
Okay. All right. So let's start with your conversion story. How did you become a convert to diet and lifestyle medicine, to the whole food plant-based diet? I'd love to hear how that happened for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as you already said, we go into school, and if we're going into med school, we're learning one approach, which is make the diagnosis, treat the disease. And my career in medicine has been long, spanning almost 3 decades. And in that time, I've done a lot. I've seen a lot, and which has gotten me to where I am today. But let me give you a little bit of backstory here, because I originally started down the path of what I thought was what every doctor does. Is I went into internal medicine, and as soon as I finished medical school, that's what I started residency with. And I quickly realized that I was a drug dealer and not a fruit and veggie dealer, as I like to be called or known as. And that interaction between, seeing the same patients in clinic again and again with the same diagnoses and my same nice, we used to handwrite our notes at that time. That can tell you how long I've been doing this. There wasn't the EMR where you type stuff into. It was handwritten notes. And every time a patient would come in and I'd pull out the chart, I'd be like, oh, there's my note from a month ago. The person's back. And not only was it unsatisfying for me, it was deeply unsatisfying for the patient because they're not getting better. And I thought, well, I've done all this training. I've got to figure out something I can do that will, one, satisfy my curiosity as a physician, but also feel like I'm helping people, which is ultimately the goal when it comes to a physician. So I had spent about probably 9 months doing radiology, and I thought, oh, I'm going to do radiology. That's all I did during my electives. I loved procedures and the imaging, and just like being able to see the human body in this like black and white form and seeing what's going on. But then I was like, I can't sit in the dark for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to do that. So the next closest thing was pathology, and I had a very strong foundation in pathology from my medical school training. And I thought, wow, okay, there's no way I'm going to learn everything here. So this will keep my curiosity satiated, and like I'm a lifelong learner. And I'm like, okay, this will be it. So I did. I went into pathology. I did another residency in pathology, and then I did additional fellowships. So I did a residency in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and then a fellowship in cytopathology, and then another fellowship in breast, bone, and soft tissue cancers. So, I have this deep immersive world in where I'm looking at the human body under the microscope and really looking at all these cellular changes going on. But what got me to today is, as I'm seeing all these changes happen in the human body, I'm going, wait a minute. We make the diagnosis, the person gets surgery, they get chemo, they get radiation, but why am I seeing them again with another diagnosis? And then again. And when, and even if it's not a malignant cancer diagnosis, if it's something like, say, reflux, and we're allowing them to continue their lifestyle and eventually develop Barrett's esophagus, and then low grade dysplasia, and then high grade dysplasia. And now they've got to have their esophagus out. So I've seen this span of development, and I'm like, I know a secret. And the secret is it's in your control. And if somebody else isn't going to tell them, I feel like just because I've spent so much time literally looking at what I call angry cells, I call your cells, anytime they're not doing what they're supposed to be, instead of being happy cells, they're angry cells. And there's specific morphological changes we can see in that, that a lot of this is preventable. So why not share in that essence? So that's what got me to today.
Well, and let me ask you, because there's a lot of physicians that go through the same types of training that you did that don't have the same belief system as you, that seem to be more fatalist, where they just kind of shrug their shoulders and, they're not interested in helping a patient change their life or prevention or finding the root cause of disease. I mean, where did you diverge from that way of thinking?
Where did I diverge? I don't know exactly when or where I diverged, but if I'm going to live on this planet, I want other people to be happy alongside me, right? Because these are my friends, family, like people who are going to be flying the airplane that I'm in, people who are going to be on the road that I'm driving on, right? So if I aim to create a happier, healthier planet and a happier, healthier world, then I need to be a participant in contributing to do that, really. So selfishly, it's for my own good, but really at the end, it's for everybody's good.
Sure, that makes sense. Who was the first, person that really influenced you in terms of, the plant-based diet and food being medicinal? And before you answer, it's ironic to me that doctors are trained as doctors of internal medicine. Like you hear this term all the time, right? Internal medicine or internal medicine. And like you don't even think about it. But one day, like I had this epiphany, I'm like, wait a second, what is internal medicine? Oh yeah, it's pharmaceuticals. Right. So you're a doctor of pharmaceuticals. Like this is what you become with that type of training. And then the word medicine itself has such a positive connotation, but it's almost like it's been hijacked. Right. And, because so many pharmaceuticals don't heal the body. They're not really medicine. What are they doing, right? Alleviating symptoms. But anyway, that's a rabbit trail. So, who was there a singular event or person or book that came into your life that really kind of like was the eye opener for you?
I don't think it was an eye opener per se. I mean, I think just really looking at what I was exposed to, which was, I grew up in the Northeast, so I grew up eating, public school lunches to going off to undergrad, university food and late night pizzas and all this stuff. And then off to med school where, we get free food in the doctor's lounge, and just really going, something isn't right here, because this isn't actually food that I'm eating. And I think the one person, if anything, that sustained me from not becoming sick in my lifetime, because I will tell you, my colleagues who have grown up with me are on those medications and have chronic diseases of the same, age group and everything. And I would say that one person is probably my mom. For me, it was, I grew up in a household where my mom would cook every home cooked meal. I learned how to cook from her. When I went away to college and medical school, I would pick up the phone and be like, Mom, I want to make this. How do I make this? And so that's kind of how I learned to really benefit from food as medicine, and seeing how those changes kind of play into cellular health. And then little did I know there's this whole world about this, because you don't see it in the hospital system. So then when I discovered the whole world, I was I trained at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. And I'm like, oh, yeah, these botanicals that I grew up having from Ayurveda, these were ones that I grew up as a child having. And now I understand what they do in our body from a medical perspective. But I was not taught that in medical school, nor was I taught that, like, when I started practicing. So I actually went back and I trained in integrative medicine, and I trained in culinary medicine and functional medicine to really be able to take what I know about cellular health and put it into a perspective of these are lifestyle diseases, and what are the different aspects, whether that is nutrition, whether that is mind body medicine, whether that is a whole body system like Ayurveda, and how to really integrate it into this approach, which is what I use today.
So you wrote a book called The Anatomy of Wellbeing, which I have right here. And and I want to recommend it, obviously, for people watching and listening, because it's an incredible book. It's very thorough. I mean, they just cover a lot in there. And I just remember how excited I got when I realized that there was just so many published studies on the anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, bioactive compounds in food, in fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, whole grains. Like, it's been studied extensively. Nobody's teaching it, right? I mean, you really have to go to a specialized place to learn it, as you did. And it can certainly be learned thanks to the internet, right? If you have enough time to read studies and all that. But it's amazing how much information's out there that's all pointing back to the same very simple approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for bringing up my book, The Anatomy of Wellbeing. It's a condensed version of 95,000 words where they told me to actually stop writing. They're like, you can write a second book. And I'm like, no, I didn't mean this to be a book that you read and then put down and then open up another book. This to me is your handbook for how the human body works and how you can apply different lifestyle rituals, as I call them, into a sustainable way, rather than our habits, which, to me always give a negative connotation, or routines, which we really get kind of bored with, and they're not very sustainable. Rituals to me are really for your long-term functional well-being, and how to decide when you need to incorporate what, whether it's from a nutrition standpoint, whether it's from a sleep standpoint, whether it's from a movement standpoint, and whatever's going on in your life. And part of that does incorporate, when I'm working with my patients now, I'm just seeing that we are a very overfed and nutrient depleted society. So we've got plenty of food and we're eating all the food, but our nutrients at that cellular level are absolutely depleted.
It's the micronutrients that we're missing, not the macros, right? We're all getting plenty of protein, fat, and carbs. We're getting those in excess, but it's all of these wonderful, obviously the vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants, and thousands of phytonutrients that are found in plant food that most people just don't even eat. I mean, before I had cancer, I was the average American. I was eating maybe 1 to 2 servings of fruits and vegetables per day on a good day, right? Then that would be like maybe an apple or a banana. And then the vegetable side, maybe my wife would cook dinner and there'd be some green beans, or a little salad. Like it was not sufficient. Right. And I was eating tons of fast food, processed food, junk food, tons of meat and dairy, sugar, salt, and oils. That was the standard American diet, the Western diet. That's what I ate. And I've always been thin. So I never thought twice about anything I ate because I felt like I had a free pass. Like, I'm thin, I can eat whatever I want. Like, I have this crazy high metabolism. So I can supersize every meal and it's fine. Like, I don't gain weight. But anyway, I was wrong. I did not have a free pass. But yeah, I'm so glad that you made that point because we are lacking all these wonderful nutrients that have sort of been dismissed or downplayed. And, people think, well, I just take my multivitamin, right? And I get the 13 essential vitamins and some minerals and I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really comes down to understanding what is going on in the body. And, for one, yes, we do have a problem with the standard American diet. And unfortunately, it's quite an addictive diet where people don't realize until that disease hits them, where really the key is to be preventative. And even if something does hit you can still reverse a lot of things, obviously, with lifestyle. That's why we have a lifestyle approach to it. But, this is what I do with my patients. I always pull up, here's your human cell. I keep this on my desk and I'm like, I hate to tell you, but we're going back to ninth grade biology, right? So you need to understand that what you're doing is you're giving nutrients to this, and you have trillions of these, right, in your body. And what I'm finding is that people are deficient in a lot of the antioxidant vitamins. So that's going to be your vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, and plant-based phytonutrients they're deficient in. And then they're also deficient in their master antioxidant, which is glutathione. And when I sit down and we test this on patients, and then we go, are you eating any of these foods? They'll go, yeah, I ate that last month, or I'm like, you can't be eating an orange colored food once a week or once a month, and so I think we have to look at the big picture here. It's not what you do some of the time, it's what you do most of the time. Just like when somebody says, oh yeah, I went to the gym last weekend, and then all week long they just sat. You're not going to get the same benefit that you want from your weekend workout as if you would if you were doing 10 to 20 minutes a day of just, something low intensity, right? So I think that's something that is often overlooked, that we need all these things. And I think we tend to make nutrition more complicated than it actually is, when we can just say that, as long as you're focused on a whole foods, predominantly plant-based diet 90% of the time, you're going to be in a much better place than if you just continue to do a drive-through or Uber Eats or whatever else is showing up at your door next. Because our life of convenience right now will be very inconvenient when you are dealing with doctor's bills and hospital's bills and medications, because they are very, very expensive.
They are. It's much cheaper to eat healthy than it is to get sick, even though people complain about, oh, it's so expensive to eat healthy. And the reality is, it's really not. It really isn't, because when you add up all the money that you're spending on Starbucks, right, on alcohol, on the drive-through fast food, and even just restaurant food, which you're going to way overpay for. When you stop eating those foods, you will find you have a lot of money left over to buy fruits and vegetables, even organic fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and legumes. And we just see, for a lot of folks, the financial expenditure, a lot of times it's a wash. They're not spending any more money. Now, if you're on a hardcore juicing routine, you might spend a little more money. If you're juicing 5 to 10 pounds of vegetables every day, that can add up. But yeah, generally, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's just important that to kind of really dispel that myth that eating healthy is for rich people. And what we see is some of the healthiest populations around the world are actually the poorest. Yeah. And they're healthy not because they are making healthy choices deliberately, but it's because the food they have access to is typically plant food, just humble plant food from the earth, no fast food, junk food, very little meat and dairy. And they're just eating, whatever is available locally, whole grains and beans and fruits and vegetables, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a patient last week, and she's like, oh yeah, I didn't have a chance to go buy any fruits and veggies because, we're on a budget this year for Christmas, and I wanted to make sure I was getting all the Christmas gifts. And so instead we were having ground beef and nachos, and I'm going, okay, I understand a budget, but at the same time, the cost of ground beef and a bag of nachos is, at least $10 if anything. And if you bought 4 bags of frozen veggies, you would have been in a more positive direction with your health. So this comes down to, what are your life priorities? We want to be happier people, and we want to have all these things in our life, but I don't want you to think of that you have to sacrifice the things you enjoy in order to have a healthy life. If you understand how to do it, they can both come hand in hand. But the last thing you want to be doing is, at the end of the day, damaging your cells, because I tell you, cellular damage is absolutely ugly. Under the microscope, it is so ugly.
Yeah. And it's important that patients and anyone who wants to get healthy, like, I had to do this. You have to stop making excuses for your bad habits, right? You just have to stop, because you have an unlimited number of excuses available to you to not do something, right? There's plenty of them, like plenty of excuses. But the reality is, like, you either make changes and you make progress, or you don't. And so, like, you can either make excuses or you can make progress. Like, that's it. And so for me, I had to choose, like, all right, no excuses. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure out how to do it. I'm going to figure out how to afford it. I'm going to rearrange my life. I'm going to overdose on nutrition. And I went from eating 1 to 2 servings of fruits and vegetables per day to eating between 15 and 20 servings of vegetables every single day. And that includes fresh juices. So it's like, that was a massive overhaul in the amount of nutrients. I mean, just raw materials that were going in my mouth and into my bloodstream and to my cells. And I think any rational thinking person, when you show them, like, okay, you could eat 1 to 2 servings a day, or you could eat 15 to 20, which one do you think is going to be helpful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I don't really believe in diets in the sense of restricting your amount of food that you eat, because I feel that when you're giving your body the nutrients it needs from this nutrient dense whole foods, that your body will come into kind of a, equilibrium with, your weight, your energy, the way it moves. As long as you're giving it what it needs. Now, when your body doesn't have those nutrients, that's when you're getting symptoms that you need to listen to, because, whether that is, gut issues or brain fog or fatigue or whatever the issues might be, that's basically your cells communicating with you that they need something that you're not providing it. And nobody else is going to provide it. It's only you. So really prioritizing that. And that's why, I teach my patients functional culinary medicine classes where it's not about, learning one recipe. It's really about learning the skills, like, hey, if I want to put together a salad, I have this available to me and I can build a salad. Or if I want to put together a veggie burger, these are the base of the ingredients I need and I can do it. So really understanding these skills as opposed to one recipe, because you can have tons of cookbooks, but if you don't ever open them, you're still going to be a little stuck.
There's a lot of cookbook collectors out there. I might be guilty as well, right? It's like, just owning the cookbook makes you feel like you're doing something healthy, but it's delusion. We also, I love all the points you're making, because I, obviously agree with them, and we share the same convictions, but like, it doesn't have to be difficult. Eating healthy really can be simple if you start making different choices. But the patient really has to have that desire to get well and that desire to change what they're doing. And that can be difficult, right? And so what I try to do, and it sounds like we're doing the same things here, is like, instead of creating this restrictive diet with a bunch of forbidden foods, I think it's important to educate people of, like, why certain foods do promote disease, right? But I think that's not enough. That's half of the battle, so to speak. And the other half, to me, is to get people excited about eating healthy, about the benefits of healthy food, right? So it's like, hey, here are the problems with unhealthy food, and then here is all the amazing, the amazing effects in your body that happen when you eat good food. And so, like, I'm continually trying to just get people excited about eating healthy, because that's what helped me. It's like, it was never like I was like, oh, I really want this cheeseburger. No, I can't have it. It wasn't like this like internal struggle every time I was hungry. There was a shift that happened in my mind where I was so excited about nutrition. I was like, I can't wait to eat, a giant salad. I can't wait to have my smoothie, right? I can't wait to eat something that I know is going to nourish me and serve me and help me heal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I grew up watching my mom cook. So, I have friends who are like, oh, my mom never cooked. It was TV dinners and it was, whatever. They left money on the counter and we would just order. So this is a little bit of relearning what you thought was the right thing to do. But if your parents developed chronic diseases, of course you are going to, if you live that same lifestyle continuously, right? So this is really putting the power back in your hand, because if you're waiting for a solution, like going to the doctors and that medication is going to fix you, I hate to break the news to you, the medication might address your symptoms, but it's not going to reverse the disease, right? The disease will continue to progress at whatever rate, perhaps slower, but it will continue to progress until you make significant changes in your lifestyle. And, if nutrition is the hardest one for you, start with something else. Start with really optimizing your sleep. Start with moving your body. Start with your relationships and your emotional well-being. When I'm working with my cancer patients, almost 99% of them have had a traumatic event within 6 to 18 months prior to the diagnosis that they have not emotionally dealt with. And it's still kind of like this deep-seated almost pain that they just don't know how to process. And of course, it's going to contribute to the way their immune system functions and how they're going to be able to fight off their diseases.
That's a big thing. And I talk about it a lot too, is you have to address the stress in your life. And the nice thing is that you can really get the ball rolling and get some momentum and start feeling better when you start exercising, when you start eating healthy. Like those are things people can start right away, and dealing with, all the internal turmoil, right? The negative thoughts, the resentments, the insecurities, like all your false beliefs and unhealthy mental thought patterns and habits. That takes time to work through, right? But it absolutely is necessary. And I did it. Like, I'm not telling anyone to do anything I haven't done. I made a decision to forgive every person who ever hurt me. And it took time to do it. And I had to really think through my life and think about, all the people that had come and gone into my life at different points in my life. I mean, all the way back to the playground, right? To some mean kid on the playground who, hurt my feelings one time, that kind of thing. So, and that was incredibly freeing for me, just working through forgiving each person by name, letting it go and just say, God, they're all yours, right? I'm just not going to carry the anger and the bitterness and the resentment anymore. Right? I'm not going to let it steal my joy. And because we know that stress and negative emotions like that suppress your immune system and promote inflammation, right?
100%. So for sure. And I talk, my book is not simply about nutrition. I go into the mindset and how to really go from this fixed mindset that individuals have, that they're not able to change, and their victim mentality to really a growth mindset, and really tapping into the power of neuroplasticity, because you have the ability from a chemical and functional level to change the structure of your brain, right? So if you want to, be happier, if you want to change your life, if you want to improve your immune system and fight off all diseases, then where you want to start is really your mindset. It's definitely harder, to grasp than say, let me go get a green juice, but it is a critical part of your health journey that should not be overlooked.
Yeah, I know. It is so cool. The fact that, changing your mind, changing how you choose to think, like breaking bad habits, like in the middle of a temptation to do something unhealthy, choosing not to, you are rewiring your brain. I mean, it's like really so fascinating. Like you mentioned, the neuroplasticity and how your brain really can change. Like you can change your mind, not just metaphorically, right? But physically, but you have to take that action. You have to choose differently. Like you have to make different choices every day. And then over time, you rewire your brain so that those hard choices in the beginning become very easy and it just becomes natural and what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to cancer, and I know your audience is always looking for more and more information on cancer. So, I say it often, 95% of cancer is not genetics, okay? And this needs to be a reminder that every single thing we do in our life can impact the health of our cells, right? So whether, you're having that second or third glass of wine, or you're deciding to sit and watch an entire 6 hours of a Netflix and not moving your body, that is a choice, right? But your choice is either a healthy cell or an angry cell. And I think for me, when I've diagnosed, I mean, I can't even, like, I've diagnosed hundreds of thousands of cancers under the microscope, from every single organ, from pap smears with cervical cancer to, I have a breast bone and soft tissue fellowship. So I've seen over 100,000 breast cancers. And what we're seeing is that women don't just have one breast cancer, they have two, or they have three, or their entire breast is full of different types of breast cancer, and my youngest is 18 years old that I diagnosed. And I remember sitting in the office with her, and I diagnosed her as a pathologist, but then I was also in the clinic where she was seeing the radiation oncologist. And I was just talking to her, and she's like, I just can't deal anymore. All I want to do is go back to college. Like, it's a lot to deal with when you get a diagnosis. You just want your life to go back to normal.
Yeah.
And to think that if, when she was a child, that perhaps her parents knew better and didn't always take her to McDonald's and give her fast food, or maybe didn't allow her to buy all the chemical laden beauty products that are full of, all these chemicals that contribute to cellular damage, where this 18-year-old girl would be today, and I think it's not just, the individual, it's us as a society, as, each generation comes on and moves forward, that we're protecting them as well. It's not just this one individual in front of me, it's what's coming after that, and really making a global planetary change for not just our food supply, but what are we spraying our lawns with? What are the products on the shelf, when you go to like the more common stores, and how hard it is to actually find something and that is okay to use, as opposed to, it's just easier to grab something, and a majority of the shelves are full of toxic chemicals, right? So I think we as a society need to push back. We need to speak up. We need to look at, some of the maybe perhaps smaller brands that are doing the right thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. What are some of the biggest cancer promoters that you find yourself, educating your patients about, that you think people either maybe they don't know or they need to be reminded, that are, ubiquitous in our culture?
Alcohol, number one. So when it comes to alcohol, so if 1 in 8 women is going to get breast cancer, which is what it's currently at, right? Which is a lot. You're in a room and somebody's had breast cancer. Alcohol is just looked at as it's a beverage that helps relax me, which it's not. It's causing cellular damage. And for every glass of alcohol, you're increasing your risk of breast cancer 7%, 2 glasses, 14%, 3 glasses, on, because it's causing cellular damage, right? So alcohol is definitely number one. And, it's not uncommon to, when you're cooking dinner, oh, let me just open a bottle of wine while I'm preparing dinner. Well, even if you're making the best vegetable filled dinner, whole foods dinner, and then you're drinking it with alcohol, you can possibly negate some of the benefit, right? Because now the body's competing with, what am I going to do? Am I going to repair? Am I going to repair this? Am I going to go do this? So alcohol would be one. Secondary would be the lack of fiber. So our standard American diet, which is very heavily meat laden, right? So three things that don't have fiber: dairy, meat, and sugar, which is what most people eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? So with the lack of dietary fiber, you aren't creating a healthy gut microbiome. So you got to remember, you want to make friends with your best friends in your gut. So you want the really good ones because you have more of those in your body. And they can actually help fight off cancer, right? So depending on what kind of gut microbiome you can have, it can, potentially lower inflammation, create the vitamins and minerals that you need, metabolize excess hormones and neurotransmitters. So many different things. So definitely that. And then dairy, I think, is definitely, I'll speak on dairy a little bit more because I think that that's a challenge even for people who are stuck in that vegetarian place where they're just not ready to give up their cheese.
Right.
I get it, cheese, and I have seen plenty of people who are lifetime vegetarians, but they were the type of vegetarians that more than 50% of their diet was cheese, whether it's cheese on pizza or cheese sandwich or, cheese pasta.
Or the cheese
Developed
and
breast
eggs
cancer.
too, right? There's
What's
a
that?
lot of vegetarians that eat a lot of cheese and eggs.
Yes, cheese and eggs. But dairy, especially because, we have so much processed dairy out there. And there have been a number of studies that have shown, with the consumption of dairy, you're basically increasing your risk of breast cancer, not just estrogen, but also estrogen negative breast cancers. So it's not necessarily a hormone driven, but more of an insulin like growth factor driven process.
Well, before you
Yeah.
continue, can I just add that animal protein and fat and processed sugar, as you mentioned, feed bad bacteria in the gut. Pathogenic bacteria feed on those foods. And think about the kind of bacteria that are going to feed on a dead animal carcass in the wild and break that down, right? These are very different bacteria than what would rot an apple. Not that either one are necessarily healthy, but when you eat fibrous foods, plant food, you're not only getting prebiotics, which is the fiber that feeds good bacteria, you're getting probiotics if you're eating raw, if you're eating fresh fruit or raw vegetables, you're getting good bacteria in those foods. And so there's just a wonderful synergistic effect of eating those foods. And then those good bacteria produce compounds like butyrate, which are incredible for gut health, for your immune system. They're anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. And so speaking of butyrate is one of the postbiotics, so short chain fatty acids that is produced as a byproduct of eating prebiotics and probiotics, right? So you want your good gut bacteria to make that to lower inflammation. And that is something that I test often in my patients. And it's night and day between the people who are eating vegetables versus not eating vegetables. And the amount of postbiotics or short chain fatty acids that are in their body are basically non-existent. And they have high amounts of beta glucuronidase, which at the end of the day, you wait long enough, you're eventually going to develop, some kind of cancer. So it's profound, the changes that can happen on this level that you can't see as an individual, but are really happening at this microscopic, even deeper than that, cellular pathways. And this is influencing every single aspect of every cell in your body. So the way your liver functions, the way, your pancreas functions, to your thyroid, to your brain at the end of the day, all of this is being impacted. And I think the other thing people don't realize, not necessarily as a causative agent for cancer, but more as in affecting the way the body can function adequately, is medications, right? So even things like over the counter, Advil and stuff like that, or, like something for a headache, something for pain, can create disruptions in your microbiome. It can create disruptions in the way, your stomach acids function. So really contributing at the end of the day to more vitamin deficiency. So ultimately, more vitamin and mineral deficiencies don't allow cells to do what they need to do, which is repair DNA in a healthy way. And instead, the DNA gets misfolded, like the proteins get misfolded, misguided, and create something else.
Well, you mentioned pharmaceuticals, and you mentioned a couple, over-the-counter things like Advil or aspirin or ibuprofen, but there's a lot of pharmaceuticals that tell you right at the end of the commercial that they increase your risk of cancer, and a long list of other diseases that makes me laugh, because a lot of times these diseases that you're getting an increased risk for are worse than the one that they're trying to sell you the drug to take for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the latest is the Ozempic craze, because, with everybody trying to lose weight because, you don't want to give up what you're eating. Instead, you take a pill or injection or whatever. And with that, there's an increased risk of thyroid cancer. Now, imagine you get thyroid cancer and you now have to take your thyroid out. So you're now dependent on thyroid hormones because all you were trying to do is lose weight.
I made a video about Ozempic a while back, and I wrote an article about it. When it first started to get, I first started to see it everywhere, like, oh, what is happening with this thing? Yeah, I went right to the website, to the Wegovy website, and to the Ozempic website, and the disclaimers are right there on the drug websites, like increases risk of thyroid tumors, thyroid cancer, things like that. And there have been more and more studies and information coming out about other harms caused by those drugs. And so I do feel, I told you so doesn't feel very good, because I don't want anybody to suffer, but I feel justified in warning my audience that, like, hey, there are risks here. There are side effects, and like, be careful. Don't jump on the bandwagon. Like, there's no quick fix, right? Yeah. There's rarely ever a magic bullet or a quick fix. You can lose weight in a healthy way. You can certainly reverse lots of chronic disease. But if you're hoping for a pill, a potion, or a magic lotion, you're probably going to find yourself in a bigger pickle than you were, when you started at some point down the road, because, drugs beget side effects and health problems, and it becomes a vicious cycle. And it's really difficult. I know you see patients like this. So they come in and they're on 10 medications.
And they don't even know why they're on some of them. And some of them aren't even working. They're just making things worse. So I have patients come to me to get off their medications. But I think another point here that you kind of just brought up is there is no quick fix, right? So, I'm kind of asking your audience as they're listening to just really take a deep look at, can you invest the next year of your life, in your health, and just see, because even just getting 1% better every day at what you're doing, at 365 days later, you're going to be so much better than where you started, right? And we tend to have this all or nothing, and especially when it comes around New Year's, I got to go to the gym 5 days a week. And the first time you fail at that, you never go back, right? And this is where I really find that my concept of rituals goes hand in hand, because it's asking you to decide, all right, what is most important to you today? What is most important to you this week? What is most important to you this month, this year? And really, whether it's a morning ritual of taking a time to get some sun, take a walk, get fresh air, get your nutrition right, or an evening ritual to really optimize your sleep, whatever that might be, with the focus on what it's doing to your cellular health, is going to get you a lot farther than just going, I'm going to keep trying the same old thing every year. Because at the end of the day, there's so many things from a cancer perspective that's happening from, getting exposed to genetic mutations, activation of your oncogenes, your tumor suppressor genes not doing what they're supposed to do, to, the worst is a cellular immortality that tumor cells decide they want to have. And, on and on from, angiogenesis. And I've just seen so much in the human body, and I'm going, wow. And what do we do when we do surgery? We take out people's organs, whether that's a partial colectomy or a lumpectomy, and you can clearly see night and day the difference between what normal tissue looks like versus abnormal tissue. And it's not like it happened overnight.
Right. Didn't happen overnight. I'd love to get a little bit nerdy with the science and ask you, what are some of the blood markers that you're looking at that are, like you mentioned one earlier, but are there others that you look at, like that you feel like most physicians or a lot of doctors don't pay attention to, that you think are critically important, either too much of something or deficient in other things? Are there some things like that people could sort of be aware of and start to ask their doctors about, and markers to measure?
So when I'm working with my patients, I'm really talking to them about, like, let's build the foundation of your body, right? So just like you were going to build a house, you'd lay the foundation, you'd put up the walls, right? And put on the roof. So really that for me is making sure all your vitamins and minerals are optimized, right? So whether that is your B vitamins, and not just B12, but all the B vitamins, your antioxidant vitamins, the A, C, E, alpha lipoic acid, glutathione, also looking at vitamin D, which is more of a hormone than a vitamin. And then looking at your micronutrients and minerals like magnesium, zinc, making sure all of this is optimal, and your omega levels, right? So this is just the foundation. And
yeah. So are you doing something like a micronutrient profile test?
Absolutely. Yeah. You want that, and you want it annually, actually. So because things change as your diet improves, as your gut health improves, you might not need as much support. And after you kind of build that foundation, I recommend going into one of the rooms in your house, which, is usually the kitchen. So you want to go into the plumbing and really optimize the gut, So different people have different things going on in their gut. Some people might have a maldigestion problem, meaning they're eating certain foods, but they're not able to break down the nutrients. So therefore, they're not able to utilize them. So even if you're eating the best diet, you're not able to utilize the nutrients coming from that food. This makes me think of people, who maybe have had their gallbladder out because it's so easy. Oh, somebody's got gallstones. Let's just go pop that gallbladder out. It's one of the most common surgeries done. Well, what happens when you don't have a place to store bile and you continue to eat fatty food? It doesn't work so good, right? So
what does happen? I mean, it's just going straight into from the liver to the small intestine.
Yeah. So the liver is responsible for making bile. The bile is usually stored in your gallbladder. If you have a cholecystectomy, the gallbladder takes it out. Now, signs of having gallstones, you get those pretty early, okay? You'll feel this right upper quadrant pain kind of after you eat fatty meals, and your ultrasound is going to show stones in there. And not always, most of the time you're a little bit overweight and you've been eating more fatty foods and feeling like, bloated, like you're just not digesting them. Your bowel movements aren't very good. That's your body talking to you. So the solution is not necessarily let me take out my gallbladder. It's let me see if I can change something in my lifestyle. And so, malabsorption is a big one. So definitely you want to look at that. Inflammation, depending on what's been going on in your past 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long, can vary from person to person. I know that Many of my patients were on antibiotics for years and years, especially as a kid. They're like, I didn't know. Of course, they're not going to know because they just do what their parent tells them. And the parent also doesn't know by no fault of their own. They go to the doctor, and the doctor gave them antibiotics and for an ear infection or a cold or something like that. And now they've gone through their teens, maybe okay, 20s, not so good. And then by their 30s, it hits them and they're like, oh, I'm not feeling good. Now let me start asking questions. Meanwhile, their gut microbiome has become so inflamed and damaged that there's repair to be done. So depending on what kind of inflammation that individual has, that can influence that. Then there's pathogenic organisms, so like disease-causing ones that if you do have a defective intestinal barrier, maybe you are traveling and not necessarily traveling outside the U.S., but within the U.S., and now you picked up a bug that is causing issues. I just had one patient email me that her very well-known hospital system wants to put her on antibiotics for the next 6 months. When we just had her GI tract working right, now we have to deal with this, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, the person might have an infection, but what do you think that's going to do to that person if they're going to be on that for the next 6 months? Especially when they are a cancer patient and the microbiome can be protected for fighting cancer. Right? So there's a disconnect there for me that
Right.
we're only looking at bits and pieces in the system where we have to look at how does the body function as a whole.
So do you think, obviously you're looking at stool and fecal tests as well as see what's going on, coming out the back door.
Yeah,
and
so
blood work.
we'll do the kitchen, right? And then we'll move into maybe say another bedroom and do another aspect of testing, depending on the individual, right? And
what about heavy metals testing? Is that part of your practice?
Do heavy metal testing, yes.
And what are you seeing? What are you like? What are you seeing, and how do you approach, heavy metal toxicity?
Yeah, so heavy metals. So I'm seeing a lot of mercury, especially where I am in Florida. There's a lot of seafood restaurants and things. And I had one patient who she was really concerned that she had Parkinson's in her early 50s. And I'm like, I really don't think you have Parkinson's. And her neurologist was like, no, you have Parkinson's. They wanted to put her on the meds and stuff. And when I looked, I'm like, you have very toxic amounts of mercury, and mercury is neurotoxic. I'm like, let's just get rid of the mercury. And all her shakes went away. So do you think she had Parkinson's? I don't think so. Right. But now she would have never known if she didn't come work with me and instead would have been put on meds for the rest of her life. Right. And then she went back to the neurologist. She's like, oh, yeah, you don't have it. And this has happened a number of times where, I have some patients who were told they had autoimmune disease and their autoimmune markers were up for sure. And we looked at their diet and it was the heavy amounts of, say, aspartame in their diet colas that they were having, or it was something else that they were putting in to influence the way their body was working. And once we started eliminating these factors, all of a sudden their other blood markers would become normal and be like, oh, no, you don't have that disease.
That's so important. I love that. That Parkinson's anecdote. It's like, you really have to take a step back and examine, like, what am I ingesting every single day? Yeah. Right? Like, what am I putting in my body? What am I putting on my body? Because everything's a suspect, right? Or everything should be a suspect when you have some chronic condition. And you have to kind of put on the detective hat and, work with someone like you. It makes it a lot easier, obviously, than just trying to do it all yourself. But either way, it's like, think about how many people are chewing gum, right? And what's in the gum?
I chewed
aspartame, right? Artificial sweeteners. And they're chewing gum every single day. And they're ingesting this potentially toxic, harmful compound.
Another heavy metal that I see often, and this comes back to a more of a global problem, is arsenic in the water supply. So a lot of my patients have more arsenic than they should have. in their body, which you don't really want any. But when we look at the water supply they're drinking from, there is 200 times the amount of what's legal in that.
Wow.
So it is concerning because, between all these forever chemicals and other things that we're being exposed to, our body simply is not made to handle it.
That's a good point because, I think a lot of people assume that the water is clean and safe enough, that the drinking water that comes out of the tap, because it's clear and it tastes good, depending on where you live, right? I think Florida water tastes pretty funky. But in Memphis, the water tastes amazing. It really tastes good. But still, there's a long list of potential contaminants that can end up in drinking water.
And I don't want people to freak out right now, because they might be listening to this going, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't breathe the air. I can't drink the water. I can't eat the food. And that can feel very, very overwhelming. And I want you to take it from, first of all, an approach of what can you do, right? So you can look at your diet. You can clean that up and start eating more whole foods, real foods that aren't coming out of, frozen boxes and packages that have artificial food colorings and dyes and all that kind of stuff. That you can do. Next step would be start incorporating things that you don't necessarily think of. Like you were saying, you were so used to eating apples and bananas, right? Well, what if you played the Roy G. Biv game and made sure you were getting red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet every single day, or at least to start every single week. I mean, I get it in every single meal now, but there's stages of that. And then take it a step further and really start adding in those really cancer specific nutrients, right? So whether that's turmeric because of the curcumin effect to lower inflammation, whether that's resveratrol, or whether that is something like sulforaphane. So, we do have the ability to go, oh, you know what? I think my body needs that. I'm dealing with this. I'm feeling this. And really kind of masterfully and in a way get creative and think of it like, I have this group where I call it the Lifestyle Design Lab, where you're actually designing your life based off of your needs, right? So think of it like an experiment, but an experiment in a positive way.
I love that. This has been so informative. Dr. Monisha Bhanote, you're amazing. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing, that you're on the we're on the same team. And I want to make sure people know about your book, The Anatomy of Wellbeing. There it is. On Amazon?
It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, yes.
Perfect. Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And where can people connect with you and follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is drbhanote.com, and I have a free cell care plate cookbook because I'm all about hashtag cell care as self-care. And on social media, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as Dr. Bhanote. So easy to find.
Easy to find. I'll make sure I link to all of your sites in the show notes, in the blog post, and below the YouTube video. For folks listening on the podcast, it's Bhanote is Bhanote. Okay, Bhanote, Dr. Bhanote. Okay, well, thanks again. You've been so generous with your time, and we could talk for hours, and I hope we can do this again and go deeper and talk about more nerdy nutritional science stuff and anti-cancer prevention and healing strategies. So we'll have to revisit that. But anyway, thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for watching. Please share this video with people you care about. Help us spread this message that your choices matter. What you put in your body matters. How you take care of yourself matters. It can mean the difference between disease and health. And if you have disease, many diseases, chronic diseases, can be reversed by your diet and lifestyle choices. This is such a important and hopeful, encouraging message, and help us reach more people by sharing this video. And we'll see you on the next one.